Welcome to the Learn, Grow, Teach, Parent podcast. All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'm super excited about this conversation. I know I say that a lot when I start these podcasts, but I am interested mostly because I'm talking to my friends. And this is a good friend of mine, Michele Yulo. She's a parent that I'm close to because we knew each other all the way through high school. And we've kept in touch since high school. I've very much enjoyed her adventures. She is a very intelligent, very, very in touch parent. And I thought it would be wonderful to get her perspective on what it's like to be a modern parent that matriculated their child through the public school system. I believe you did all the way from kindergarten to 12th grade. Is that correct?
Correct. That's
Absolutely. Hey, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and then tell me a little bit about why you decided to join me today?
Well, I'm here outside of Atlanta in a little area called Tucker, Georgia, which is just outside of Atlanta. And my husband and I moved here in 2000. Really did not think I would have children. And we went along our merry way. And lo and behold, in 2005, I had my daughter, Gabi. And we were living in downtown Atlanta, city of Atlanta. We had a little tiny house, a 2-1 cottage style with 4 dogs and a baby. And very urban neighborhood. I was working at Georgia State University at the time, which was only a couple of miles, from the house, which was great. But as she was getting older, and you start thinking, as a parent, you start thinking, oh, about schools. And the schools down, we had an opportunity to potentially get in to a magnet school down there, through lottery, but we knew we had to move. We wanted more space. And when she was little, we started looking in this area of Tucker, which is DeKalb County. And we knew we were going to eventually sell our house. And so I started researching elementary schools primarily. And I really wasn't looking at entire districts. I was looking at elementary schools. We didn't want to move too far out of the city because my husband's job, entailed him to be local. And I had heard about this elementary school here called Livesey Elementary. And I looked it up on gradeschools.net, and I did a lot of research and talked to people. And just in my mind, I knew this was the elementary school I wanted her to go to. So when she was 3, we sold our house and we found a house here with, in a neighborhood, in a great neighborhood, very middle class, middle working class neighborhood. Um, and she started, they had a pre-K program that was through lottery. It was limited to like 20 students. And that was our first introduction into Livesey. So she was 4, we put her name in, and she got into the pre-K program, and which was amazing. And then we were kind of off and running into this little elementary school. And it's a neighborhood school. DeKalb County is kind of different from a lot of counties in Georgia, especially metropolitan Georgia, because it is very in town. It does not have these massive, huge schools. So if you go to Gwinnett County or you go into Fulton County, they have these massive schools. So they're very neighborhood oriented schools, which I think is super important, right? You can walk to the school. You can see kids and parents walking to school, which we did a bunch, and we were able to like ride our bikes there when she could ride her bike. But we got her into the pre-K, and which was a full day of 8 to 2 or 2:30, whatever it was, and just started her there. And the school itself was around 300 kids, which when you look at private schools, they're so small, but that was small for for this area. It's a small school. So um we just I just knew that that's where she was going to go, not really thinking yet about middle school and high school.
Just
you know
thinking about the initial steps. I mean, look, you're clearly invested, right? You're doing research. You're trying to figure out where's the best place. And what's prompted me immediately when you said this was that you actually chose where your house was going to be dependent upon where the school was. And this is such a common thing that happens. I mean, everywhere. Forget about Georgia, Florida.
yep.
It doesn't matter if you're in California. They're so tied into these neighborhoods that if you're in a good neighborhood, well, you're lucky. You find a wonderful little school. I mean, I'm a big proponent of
For
what I
sure.
call small schools, like the one that you found here. But what was the experience like? Did it fulfill your? Did it live up to the expectation that you had initially?
Oh, it did. The teachers had been there for a long time. The way the school was run was just, like I said, it just had that family tight knit feeling. Everybody knew your kid. They were welcoming. The classes were not, they weren't tiny, but they weren't super huge. Everybody at that school was invested in that school, and you felt it. You felt it from the beginning, from the principal down to each um, teacher, to the parents of the kids. It was super exciting for me to see Gabby start there, for sure. And I knew she needed that kind of small feel. And of course, anybody would choose that if you could, right? And like you said, we moved here for that. Now, this is a very affordable neighborhood. This is not a neighborhood that has high salary ranges, and it's super affordable. And so to find that here outside of Georgia was just, to me, it was just a really big deal. And we loved it. We loved the school. She actually went through second grade, and then we got her into a magnet school in third grade. This is interesting because even though we loved Live C, I still felt like, the grass is always greener. Maybe there's a better educational path for her. She she wasn't a great test taker, and it was very traditional teaching on some level, right? And so I was kind of hoping for maybe a little bit more non-traditional. uh, you talked a little bit about that in different episodes that I've seen. Learning for each kid is different. You want the best possibility in a classroom for your child. And I could see Gabby growing more in a environment that was more open, and that, in this magnet school that opened, it was just opening, and everybody was super excited about it. And she did get in, and we pushed for her to get in there. And unfortunately, the school's still around, but there were a lot, because it was a brand new magnet school, there were a lot of bumps. And she ended up in a class that had a lot of those bumps. Just did not work out, right? It wasn't a horrible situation in terms of, it was a good experience, I think. And they were supposed to teach languages, and just music, and incorporate all these kind of cool concepts that you weren't going to find at a traditional school. And she ended up in a really, just not a good classroom. The teacher that was supposed to start didn't. They pulled in another teacher that really didn't have the experience. The class itself, it just didn't work out. So she ended up back at Livesey. We Right.
Let me ask you. Let me ask you a question. How much time did you give it? Did you give it
The
a
whole year.
short period? So she went for a whole year, and during that year, so you really did give it a good chance.
We did.
You had the best optimistic outcome that you wanted. You wanted it to live up to what it was doing, but for whatever reason, it just didn't live up to it.
It
Uh,
didn't.
and it was an experiment for the schools, an experiment for the parents. I personally think there should be more experimental schools like that. And
I
when
agree.
they miss the mark, I know it's heartbreaking. But when they make it, when they hit the mark, it can be everything that you were hoping for. So obviously now that journey took you back to your original school. She's now in fourth grade, or is she now in fifth grade?
She goes into fourth grade.
Okay,
And
so
yeah, she goes
fourth
into fourth
fourth grade is a critical year for kids, I
grade. That's
find.
saying that it was a tough, I would say it was a tough year. I think the teacher she had at the time wasn't as engaged as some of the other teachers she had. Um, I worried a lot about her in terms of how she learned. And that traditional classroom is not good for everybody, right? It's not good for every single student. They all learn differently, and some are more academic. They have the ability to sit and read, and just Gabby just wasn't like that. And so I was concerned about it. She had some learning issues for test taking. We gave her what was called the 504 plan. Where she had a little bit more time taking tests, and things like um, some considerations there. Um, I mean, the kids were great and the school itself was great, but you're not you're not always going to get consistency in these schools. It's just not possible, right? And the classes are a little bigger, so you feel sometimes like your kid can get lost, and it's a little scary, I think, as a parent. But you do have to sit back at one point and go, okay, it's fourth grade. It is important. Every grade is important, but in the grand scheme of things, in the grand, you always have to kind of keep that, I think, in the back of your mind, or you can really go insane.
Yeah,
And
you can't blow it up, but you can't minimize it either. Obviously, you were concerned. It threw out some red flags for you, specifically to Gabby. To did you find that you picked up the slack that was lacking at the school? Did you sit down and then suddenly say, "I got to crack this code with my own child," or did you simply have faith that all right, fourth grade is will lead to fifth grade, and things will get better?
we were involved, of course, to a certain extent, and I was always in touch with the teachers. And of course, in elementary school, very easy to communicate with the teachers. As they get older into middle school, high school, much harder, right? To just have that one on one with the teachers. And so I was in pretty good contact with her teacher, expressing my concerns for my kid. They have, all the parents come at them, I'm sure, for with all their concerns, but I would express my concerns, and of course definitely would be involved in what she was doing, the homework um, that she was doing, and trying to keep her on track. She's a good student. I mean, she wasn't a bad student, but there were certain things that she just didn't want to do. For instance, I remember there was this one assignment she would get where they would have three columns and maybe a sentence, and they would have to um, put the sentence, they would have to draw a little picture on one square and then in the middle square. I mean, I forgot there were different ways they would have to come at this sentence, and the drawing part she just didn't want to do. She hated it, absolutely hated it. And she just would go crazy fretting over doing a drawing, doesn't like to draw, and she couldn't be perfect. She didn't want to do it. And I finally just emailed her teacher. I was like, does she really need to do this drawing part? Does she really have to do this part? It is killing her and it is killing us. And she wants me to draw it. And I don't want to draw it. And she said, don't worry about her doing the drawing. And I said, yeah, okay, good. Because this is, this is a huge thorn in our side right now. It's just not something she likes to do. There were issues, little issues like that along the way where you step in as a parent and you go, I have to ask the question, does she really need to be doing this? Is it really something that's going to help her, grow as a student? It didn't. So, so we were able to take that off her plate. But of course, I was always involved. You don't want to be too involved. You don't want to do their homework for them. You know, you want them to learn and be able to get through those things. But she had some anxieties, especially about doing homework. And again, I remember what the one podcast where Michael, my brother, said, no homework. Why are we giving these kids homework? And
I agree with that, by the way.
yeah, it's horrible. They come home and they've been at school all day, and they should be out playing, and they should be doing different, just have the downtime when they get home, and then they're doing homework, and that's an added stress. And this elementary school, not a lot. I think what they did was from, first grade to second, they just added as they went. Right. And,
Mm.
You get a little here, then they add a little bit more here. By the time you get to fifth grade, you, you have a little more homework than you did, in fourth grade and then third grade. And of course, fifth grade now is what sixth grade used to be for us. It's the last year, which I
Right.
feel too soon too. I think it's too soon. I wish they had the extra year in elementary
Yeah.
school to succeed,
Yeah. Let
for
me
sure.
chime in here for you. It's way too early to be, moving over into middle school. And then look, I understand what educators and what the system is trying to do. The system is simply trying to give an advantage. And generally speaking, they always feel, well, if they need to be at point A, B, or C by this age, we may as well get them started earlier. And this is a common theme with modern education. I disagree with it. I disagree with it primarily because I believe that there are developmental ages and that they don't match up with necessarily the curriculum. And I also believe in individuation when it comes to teaching. I'm a much bigger fan of tutoring than I am of classroom education and lectures. And what you mentioned, what you've done is, the success that you have with the ability to navigate is good communication with a teacher. That's key. But then also the ability to be able to put in your influence and the teacher to be open to it. They don't want trouble either. They want that child to be successful. So it's easy to get caught up in that
Yeah,
feeling that you're not doing enough, and then start doing too much in the wrong places, I think, as well.
it's so
Did
true. Yeah.
did
It,
Gabby caught up, right? She did. She's fine.
Oh, she was fine. Her grades were good. I mean, she got through no problem. Her fifth grade teacher I loved. She ended up with a really good fifth grade teacher who was one of the tougher teachers. And in fact, I remember Gabby saying in something like third grade, "I hope I don't get Miss Hahn for fifth grade." That's indeed who she got, and I was hoping she would get her because she was one of the tougher teachers. And tough, by tough, to me, I just saw that she was on top of things and that she cared about those kids. And of course, kids being kids, they want the easier route a lot of times. And she was a really good teacher. And so I was really happy that she got her in her fifth grade class, did well in math, and just started to uh, kind of get better from there. When she entered middle school, she dropped the 504 plan. She didn't need it anymore, which was great. And so, she definitely improved, there. And socially, Livesey was just such a great school. The kids, like I said, that she knew from pre-K, she is still friends with those kids now.
Oh, that's great.
She's actually has, and she's in college, and she actually has some of her friends there who she's known literally from pre-K. And we know the parents, and they're still in the neighborhood. And we've been here 15 years. So that's been a huge advantage for her, as much as parents worry about the next level. And then when you hit middle school, now you're in a whole other frame of mind. And that you're nervous now, right? You're the kid. The school's a lot bigger, and you always hear terrible things about middle schools. I don't care where you live. It's just it's just the nature of that age, and as that age going into school, obviously that what 12 to 15, around 12 to 15, such a tough time as it is. And then you hear, oh, the classes are big and they're going to get lost, and they don't, if you're in the general population, it's going to be terrible. And I mean, there's just so many other pressures once you hit that level. And I remember thinking all through Livesey, well, we'll think about it. We'll think about it later. Well, maybe we can do a private school. Maybe we can find another type of education for her. But it just, all of a sudden we were there. And what they did at Livesey, which was really great, was at once your kid got to the fifth grade, they had a meeting, a parent meeting, with parents. One parent ran it, great guy in the neighborhood, and his kids went through the system as well. He would have a parent meeting where he would bring in the parents whose kids were about to start middle school, and all the parents who had started middle school, whose kids started middle school, to assure them and to reassure them that it was going to be fine if they went to the middle school, because the instinct is, once they get there, to pull your kid. They've been at this great elementary school, they've all gone through school together, um, and all of a sudden the worry and the concern comes along, and they want to pull their kids. And now when you pull those kids, you also pull those parents, and you pull that involvement that was so huge at the elementary level. And then now you take that out, and the middle school loses something. And so what his idea was, we want to keep that and bring that to the middle school. We don't want all these parents pulling their kids and putting them into different schools. So he would have this great meeting, and I went a few times when Gabby was in middle school. I went as a parent before she started middle school, and then I went as a parent of a child who was at middle school. And then we would just sit. They had so many different people there speaking to different programs. Gabby did get into the STEM program in middle school, which was great. They had a great STEM program, and
Wow.
that was super important. It was super important, and she had to apply, and there was an interview, and it was limited, but she got into it. And again, that was that whole idea, right? That you're involved, you know what's coming, you're not just throwing them in there. And so she got into that program. But and we spoke to that program in those meetings, but we also, people also spoke to the general population. I think there was so much worry about it. And a lot of kids did. They ended up just going right to Tucker Middle. And that was, I think, key again to that involvement. The parents involving, to that level, to saying, hey, we want to bring everybody over. If we pull these kids, that school is going to not be as good as it could be.
That's very insightful to forward think that way. It's nice that you had some parental leadership that saw it. And also, let me tell you something. The unknown is the enemy of all parents
So true.
because you just can't prepare for every single thing. And
That's
things
right.
come out of the blue a lot. And not having a support network can be it can be stressful. It can be difficult. And middle school is very, very tough. I mean, my girls went to a private elementary school. They started in a Montessori school. They moved on to a Waldorf school. Both
Right.
of those schools are very task oriented, very art forward, but they don't skim on any of the traditional learning at all. In fact, both of my girls, by the time they got into middle school, were highly advanced in these other subjects as well. They just had bigger range. But one of the main problems with the school was definitely that once they got into eighth grade, they were moving into high school, there wasn't a very good transition
Mm,
for the kids. And they did scatter mostly. I mean, my daughter had a very small class. It was about 12 kids, Annabella. And when she decided to go to high school, she went to a magnet program. She's in the orchestra. She's a cellist. But
yep.
three other kids went along with her. And that small group helped also some of our parents have that same network. But with
Hmm.
Juliet, my youngest, was a different story. Her class didn't make it through the pandemic very well.
Mm,
And so when she started sixth grade, my wife Robin and I decided to homeschool rather than go through. We toured all the different middle schools, and I just didn't see it as something that would work out for us. And we had the ability to do it, and honestly, it was an adventure for us to do. It's not for everybody to homeschool, but we did it.
and you only did it with Juliet. You didn't do it with Annabella.
That's right.
um,
Juliet through middle school. We taught her sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. We
yeah.
split up the different topics. My wife is an extremely dedicated and very good teacher, so she taught certain subjects. I'm very well versed in other subjects. At that time, I was also teaching. I had begun teaching music to little kids, which I do.
Yeah.
Everybody listens to the podcast knows that I
Yeah.
teach the little babies. And I've
Yep.
always did that to keep myself in education. But the middle school, the homeschooling for middle school was fantastic. It was the best experience, I would say, that I've ever had with with Juliet, my daughter, because we were able to get so much time. We were just lucky to be able to. I'm not saying everyone should go out and homeschool. I'm not saying that middle schools are bad, whether they're private or public. None of that.
Personal. It's
Yeah,
a
as a
and it also has to be amenable to the child.
hundred
There's no
percent.
way with my daughter. Not no way possible. She would not have been open to it. Um, she didn't like being told by me or my husband what to do, how to do things. Just not that personality. Also, an only child, and she needed that social component. She needed friends. It was bad enough we're stuck with her all the time. I mean, that's it, just her and us. And, that to me, coming up with siblings, I knew there was going to be, she was going to need that, right? She was
Right.
going to need that. She just did not have the personality, of course. homeschooling, good for some people, for sure. Absolutely. If you can do it, I think it's amazing. I don't think I would have had the patience with her, and I don't think she would have been open to it. So, you know, good for anybody who can do it, and their kids are going to listen to their parents and learn from their parents. Gabby needed to learn from other people. Gabby needed
Right.
to learn. There was no way she was going to learn from us. On so many levels, we could see that from when she was very small, that she needed to go outside the house. And she's very good at taking direction from teachers, and she has no problem with authority, which is good. But home, I don't think so. Just not that personality. And
Well, that's good, because that's the second parenting hack that if I were to give advice to any parents, is become an expert on your child. Really, really know your child.
that's right.
Spend time with them in every aspect that you possibly can.
That's right.
And the more that you are the expert on your child, the less likely it is that you'll go down a path that you regret in any way, shape, and form. So that's a big, big plus. And parental involvement is one thing, but parental intention, which is really sitting down and saying, no, I know my child better than anyone, has to happen. It's a must, and it's
It's
hard to do.
yeah, it is. I mean, I think as a parent, you know your child, right? You think you know your child. And of course, if you have more than one child and you've got a house full of kids, and it may be a little more difficult to parse out who needs what, when they need it. But I totally agree with that. I feel like I knew Gabby intimately in terms of how she learns, how she processes information. Her personality is so strong. She's not super compliant. That's she's super independent, super strong-willed, and so she needed that structure in a for sure. I think she needed that kind of structure in a classroom. I think it helped her stay on task, and not that she wouldn't fall off, or fall behind or not do her work. Sometimes she wouldn't, and I didn't step in too much. There's a whole school of thought here. I read a lot about parents being too involved and too on top of their kids, and I didn't want to do that either. And to your point, it's a fine line that you have to walk in terms of knowing everything about your kid and knowing everything they're doing, and how they're doing it. At one point I just said to Gabby, I'm not going to step into your studies until there's an issue. um I get an email from your teacher that says you've fallen behind. Well, I'm going to step in. Don't let me step in. I don't want to step in. I don't want to. I'm not going to look at your grades every day. Right? They have the ability now, right, to it's called Infinite Campus, where it starts in middle school, where you can go in and you can check your kids' grades. You can see what assignments are lacking, what their average is, all that, and you can go insane looking at this. I, you know, I think I looked at it a handful of times. But I know parents that looked at it every day,
Hmm.
every single. You're missing this assignment. You need to do this. Why didn't you do this? Why did um you it's too much. You have to allow your kid the opportunity to go, and they always say this, right? If they're going to fail, you have to allow them to fail. You have to allow it. You can't be the reason that they're getting straight A's. You cannot be the reason. I always said, we always kind of said, you need good grades. Okay, A's and B's are fine. We're not expecting straight A's, for sure. Did not want to put that pressure on her. And as a child, I put the pressure on myself. My parents, like we talked about, absent. Who knew? When they met with the teacher, they found out how I was doing. They saw my report cards. That was it. And I want to get good grades. But she's very different. She knows she needs to stay at a level, but she's not one of those, you know, the minimum of what she needs to do, she will do. And I have no doubt that she will do it. But in terms of getting, those straight A's, it would have been too much pressure for her to maintain that. It would not have, it's not a good situation. Again, goes to knowing your child. And so if you say to your kid at a young age, that whole idea of helicopter parenting and tiger parenting, and, pushing them and pushing them, you do have to push to a certain extent. Like we said, A's and B's, please. A's and B's. C's, D's, pretty much not acceptable unless it's a super hard class. And you get out of, she took pre-calc. If she made a C in pre-calc, I don't think I would be upset because it's a tough class.
Yeah.
Um, Normal stuff you've got to maintain, and I think also keep in perspective, your middle school transcript is not going to get you into college. That's not what's going to make or break you. So make your make your mistakes, you know, figure out how you study, and she wasn't a reader. She's not super into reading, and so I would worry, oh my god, she doesn't like to read. Oh my god, how is she going to make it through? Just little things like that. It would just, oh, kill me. um but I would allow it to kill me, and I would not try to put it on her. As long as she was doing okay, I was like, okay, you're not a reader. I don't know what to say. She's not going to pick up books and just, I was like that. That's part of the issue. I was like that. She is not like me.
Right. Your kids are not you. And getting back to the idea of this snow plowing things for making things easier and or getting involved too much and advocating for your child in certain ways, that's certainly not what I meant by knowing your child. It's more what you've just described. You
Yeah,
understand the habits that you want to build that are healthy habits. I mean, the
that's
skills that they learn in middle school certainly determine their success in high school and beyond. But they're beginning, they're early stages.
mhm,
What I tell my kids is that you have to be very comfortable with being a beginner at something, which means you try it and you fail a lot, and you try again, you keep going, but you're a beginner. You're not the best. You
right,
suck at it, and
right,
then you have to then. But once you are good enough at something, then you have to be very diligent about finding a competitor, someone that will push you, a peer, someone that's at your level. And then they come back and they go, wow, look at this, what I did. And then you say, well, I want to do that too. And that competition drives you. And then you learn how to be
right,
driven by life. And then
right,
but you must also temper that with, okay, I'm an expert. I'm really good at something. And you must find the ability to then be a mentor or teach. That's the learning circle that I see. You're
yeah,
a learner. You're in the mix of it. You're now an adept that's going for it. You're trying hard. And then the other one is, now I've got this licked, I should help others. And if that sort of plays out in life, because you're going to be new at your job, you're going to be in the middle ground at your job, and then you're going to be the boss at one time. And that may happen in a marriage, or that may happen anywhere that you do
right,
it.
right.
So these skills are strong to have. Did you find that there were any pitfalls in middle school, or did you get through that and then high school came along?
She was in the STEM program in middle school. She was into sports as well. So she, again, she had all these kind of other things going on. She, not the kind of kid that ever could be a beginner. That was very hard for Gabby to be a beginner, and very, very hard for her. She couldn't do something right away. Boy, it was not good. It was a direct reflection on her and her inability. All of a sudden it would be like, I should be able to do this right now, right? And that's just a personality thing for her. Perfectionist on that, in that way. Just, when she learned to tie her shoes, I was not allowed to tell her how to tie her shoes. She had to learn them on her own. How are you going to learn? Talking about, I'm going to teach you how to do this. Nope. She had like a book thing that she looked at, and then when she couldn't do it, she would get so frustrated, and then she'd throw it. And then the next day, boy, she'd be right back at it until she learned to tie her shoes. She, that was it. Biking, she wanted to ride a bike at 3. I said, well, let's get you some training wheels. Didn't want the training wheels. Well, it's going to take some time here for you to learn how to ride a bike. You're not going to be able to just get on it and go. Oh my gosh, it was crazy. That's, again, goes to your personality of each child. Um, I would say getting through middle school, she was busy, right? She was playing baseball. She was in an orchestra. She was in a youth orchestra. So she was busy doing that. Plus, she had her studies. She had all her friends. I would say middle school was not bad. It was not a
Okay.
bad. Yeah, I would say it was good, and it really got, it really trained her to get to that point where I didn't worry about her in high school. I wasn't worried about that transition. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. She,
as a parent, that's a big deal. So, let me peel back one thing. Let me pull on a string that you mentioned here. Now, it's definitely true that having a child that's independent, or that's an independent learner, that wants to learn things and doesn't want to be told what to do, can have certain challenges. Now, you got over that. You figured it out. You cracked that code too. To some extent, she
yeah,
was able to figure things out on her own. But clearly, Gabby's the type of person that she knows how to learn. She knows how to learn. She got through everything.
that's
I mean,
true.
I watched her take on and be. I mean, I know she's a golfer, right? I'm a golfer from when I was a teenager as well, and watching her, you're never good at golf. That's something you're always learning.
Oh,
So
I started
this,
taking, by the way, Mark, I started taking lessons a few months ago because I wanted to learn. And I can't believe how hard golf is. And I really can't believe how hard it is. It is, I, I don't even know what to say about it. I never knew. I watch golf all my life. I love golf. Gabby golfed, obviously, but never really realized what it takes to hit a ball in the right way.
did she
I never,
stick around? Did she stick around with it? Does she still play?
no, played through high school. She mainly took it as a course, so she didn't have to do PE, and had not played
That's
golf before.
not bad. That's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad. So I said, okay, okay, go play golf. And because she played baseball and she was athletic, and she played basketball as well, and she picked it up pretty quickly. I mean, she was able to, she can hit the ball really far. I mean, she just, we took her to a pro who said first time out of the gate, first time she hit a ball, he said she's already doing things that I'm trying to tell kids how to do for a year, and she's already doing it. So, but I think she didn't like the solo nature of golf. You being
Right.
used she was used to being on teams with kids, and that was a whole other aspect of her education, was the sports that she did, and uh, the teams that she was on, and the kids she met there, and being successful at it. That was something she was super successful at, really good at, but worked hard at. She worked hard to hone her skills, to be as good as she could be, and she loved it. You want to find those things that your kids are passionate about. She played violin, and then at some point, she played from when she was 3 till about 14, and then just didn't want to play anymore. And you hear these stories. I just, your kids, and I'm going to be the parent that makes sure that they, continue to play. And I did. I made sure she played as long as I could get her to play. She was in a great orchestra down in the city of Atlanta, amazing orchestra, and she could read music, and she made first violin, and then she just didn't want to practice. She just didn't want to do it anymore. I just couldn't make her do it anymore. But looking back now, it's she has that skill, right? She has that skill. It's ingrained in her. She loves music. She loves music, and we know how important music is. And
She sounds more like a kid that we grew up with, you and I.
yeah,
We had a ton of range when it came to activities and things that we did. There was always a very broad spectrum of things that we could get involved with. We dabbled in some, we were more serious with others, but we weren't attached. Our identities weren't attached to that thing. The, oh, I'm a volleyball player, I'm a football player, I'm a violinist, there's some kids that, I mean, obviously we know them, that took their talent from high school into their adult lives and moved on with that.
right,
That's a given. But generally speaking, I think a lot of parents make the mistake you were just alluding to, which is, if I can just get my kid to be an expert at this one thing, then their life will be fine. If I can just get them to be, maybe they're a prodigy, maybe I'll push them when they're young, or
right,
they shouldn't give up. And I
right,
never look at things as giving up, as long as there was a lesson to be learned. In fact, you got to let go of a few things so that you make room for the newer lessons that come up. So now high school came around, and it sounds like she did well there.
did pretty
And
well. again, it was a bigger school, 3 stories, 1,500 kids, but still felt small to me. That's where the parent really has to step back, and they prepare you for that as a parent. They say, you're not going to be as involved in high school. You know, Teachers aren't going to be, and I did have some communication with, but it's hands off. They need to go and do what they have learned to do from pre-K on. They have got to take, the reins here,
Hmm.
and know what their homework is. Obviously it steps up. You've got 7 periods, you've got some electives, but you have all these other classes, and you have to you have to manage all that, and there's no way. What we know now, right, how high school is and where kids are, and the different way they learn math, and all the things that they do differently than how we learned, would be impossible for me to step in anyway. In terms of that, although she would have me sometimes read some of her papers and kind of go through some things for that, but other than that, you pretty much step back, and she seemed to manage that well, and the schools are good. Again, now you've got kids coming in from, as you did in middle school, from different areas, much bigger school, um, bigger classes. She started in the IB program. They had like a pre-IB for ninth grade that would then go into IB. So she got into that program and started in that program. Then she didn't like that program. She went 1 year and said, "I don't want to do it." Um, she just she just didn't want to stay in it. She didn't like the level of work. It was a lot of work, a
Hmm.
lot of work, and that takes away from you being able to do other things that you're involved in. And so she came out of that and then just started. She took her regular classes plus AP. She did some advanced courses, and got what she needed. And this is where, as a parent, you have to keep shifting your you know your perspective of where your kid, at this point, you're seeing college now, or whatever they're going to do after they graduate. It doesn't have to be college. Obviously, we know that kids don't have to go to college, but I think, for me, I always said to her, if there was something else that you had some skill, fine, but let's focus on you going to college. And it was all, even from when she was little, we talked about her going to college. And I think that comes up a lot now, where people are like, well, college, it's overrated, you don't have to go, kids don't have to do that, they can go to hey, they can do whatever they want, as long as you have an idea of what your kid can be successful at. You want them to be successful ultimately. You don't want them to just graduate and flail, and you know they can't go she can't go travel Europe for a year and find herself. I mean, the natural thing would be for her to start college. And so you start thinking about that. But you're constantly shifting, you know, how you're looking at their education, how you're looking at them as individuals, what they really want. You have to start really backing off and allowing them to make those decisions about what they want to do. And at one point she said she did some dual enrollment too during high school. She took some dual enrollment classes, which was great. Um, and of course they went through COVID, right? She went through COVID in I think it was 10th grade. She went through COVID. That threw a wrench in the mix. Was not great, but like you said, it's a learning lesson. What did I
Yeah.
learn from that? What did they learn from that? And they somehow made it out of that. You're so worried that it's going to affect them, and it's going to pull them back, and they're not going to catch up. And it was fine. It wasn't a great time, but it wasn't a great time, right? She'd roll out of bed, we're for her first class at 8 o'clock, turn on the laptop, and just, and she said to me at one point, I'm not learning anything really, for the most part.
Wow. Well, I dodged that bullet with both girls because I was homeschooling Juliet, so she was
Right.
here, she was in class.
Right.
Annabella is ninth grade, and it was only here in Miami-Dade County. The schools were open a lot faster than in other places, and
Yep.
so you had the chance. If you didn't feel comfortable, you could continue to do online. If not, you your child could come in. And Annabella was just itching to get in front of and meet people, and she'd come from a small school. She wanted a different high school experience. So yeah, we were able to dodge that to an extent. But I think you made a point a few sentences back that I wanted to uh, ask you to elaborate a little bit better on. One of the main things that a lot of parents do is they forget that they represent the world at large. In your family, in your home, you are the world at large to children that are not adults. They're not adults yet. They don't know. It's easy to do that with uh, elementary school kids. It's easy to do that to an extent with middle schoolers. It's much trickier to do that with high schoolers, because everything that you've instilled in your child up to that point can now, be, you ask kids, hey, have an open mind, be open, and
Yeah.
but you never tell them what to be open to. And so
Right.
a lot of interesting ideas and people, they're exposed to that. So you, as a parent, you have to represent the world for a young adult and make that transition from
Yeah.
telling them what to do and guiding
Right.
them in that direction to really being the wisdom that they need to hear.
Right. I,
Were you
I,
able to do that?
yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, I think now more, this first semester at college, I think I see that more right now. I think in high school, there was one point where she said, I don't want you to step in for me anymore. She was doing dual enrollment. There were some issues. I was going back and forth with the counselor, and I was helping her with, fixing her class issues and schedule issues. And I think she was around the end of 15, maybe 16, and she said, I can manage it. Don't reach in, don't email unless I ask you to do it. And so I had to step back at that point and say, and trust. And I think that's a big issue with how parents, educating going through the education process, and that trust that everything that you've done, like you just said, showing them the world, being the world to them, has transmitted to them, so that they know, what to do, so they know that they can do things on their own. And she really took over at that point. For the most part, I didn't really even have to know half the time what was going on unless I asked her. Or if there was an issue, maybe she would say, hey, I need you to sign this, or I need you to email this, the counselor, and say something. But she managed that process so well. And even when it came time for, choosing colleges, she just knew what she wanted. And she only applied to two schools. One is an hour away, which is where she is at Kennesaw State. The other one was Georgia State. She didn't do this big wide net. I'm going to apply to 5 million places out of state. Now, we pretty much said in state was going to be probably your best option financially for us. And unless you could get scholarships, which not at that level, right? And I mean, you get the Hope Scholarship here in Georgia to cover your tuition if you're in state and you carry a B average or better,
Right.
which is great. And she just knew herself so well, and I had to trust that everything that we had been through with her, everything that we had taught her, whether directly or indirectly, because I think a lot of it is indirect. I don't think a lot of it is just direct, telling them all this stuff. They're just absorbing everything that you're
Yeah,
doing.
sure. I mean, you model things. They
For sure.
see you, they see your interactions. You stand in for ideas and conflicts and conversations that happen. And you have to navigate that. You have to have the ability to understand that at
Yeah.
one point you're doing exactly that, which is you're peeling away the being the ego and being the conscience for someone that you love, to trusting that you've developed that and you've done a good job developing it. And clearly you've
Absolutely.
done that. Clearly you did that with Gabby, because you can just see from the way that you're saying it that I'm privy to seeing her world a little bit.
Right.
What you guys have done, because you guys have done a very good job with her. I know that she was very close to Steve when your husband, when they were when she was
It was like,
little. She loved just like
And,
Annabella and Juliet loved doing woodworking with me.
yeah,
They loved doing she loved doing hands-on stuff with him.
she
I,
did.
I yeah, I think that now that the college experience has reared its moment, you've got to be curious to see where that actually takes her, because it sounds to me like she hasn't nailed down exactly what she wants to do yet. She's still figuring that out to some extent, which is healthy. You got to.
It is. It's amazing at this level now to look back, which is partially why I wanted to talk to you because now you have the benefit of being able to look back and see this whole panoply of everything that you were able to do. It's very unreal, and on some level, all those little moments, all those fights, all the things you went through, all the ups and downs, and I know this is just you know, this is pretty universal, right? I just this is universal. Every parent goes through this. They're able to look back and say, "Oh my gosh, I got my kid from point A all the way here, and I did it. I don't know how I did it. Some days you don't know how you do it, and are they going to be successful? But she is going to be successful. My husband has always said, I do not worry about her. She knows what she wants and she knows how to get there, whatever that means for her. She has an idea of what she wants. She was thinking about sports physical therapy because she was an athlete for so long, but now she's kind of wavering. She wants to make money. She definitely wants to make money. That's very important to her. And so she now is starting, I think, to see that how this journey, this college education is going to help her get that right. Um, when I went to college, I went for English literature because I loved English literature. I didn't care about the money. I should have cared, but I did not care. I wanted to go to school and be um, ensconced in reading and writing. That's what I wanted. And I wanted to learn about the world through literature. And I loved it. I loved it. Uh, I would continue to be in school if I could. That's not her journey. Her journey is there's a means to an end. That's how she's going to see college. She's having a great time socially. She has a great roommate. It's been a great experience so far. She's halfway through her first semester. I don't know what her grades are. Doing fine. I've asked her if she's doing okay. She seems to be doing well. She's taking 5 classes in a lab, and she's doing well, but she does have an idea of what she wants to do. And that's going to shift a little, but she is on it. And she'll call me and say, Mom, I talked to my advisor and I might want to switch, and I'm asking about this, and I've already been over to this school and I've talked to these people, and I'm like, wow, yeah, it's not that she doesn't need you anymore. It's a it's a different way in which they need you. And you
Right.
really see that happen when they
and
leave.
and you have to adapt to that role. You have to, and it's your job to be adaptable now moving forward, and change the relationship as a parent, because you're still going to be a parent. I mean, I don't agree with the people that stand shoulder to shoulder with their children and call them friends. That just doesn't happen. You're going to be a parent. I want to peel back one thing and ask you a question. Did you and Steve as parents sit down and form any kind of philosophy,
Mhm.
and did that philosophy change over time? Did you was there a discussion between the two of you to say, this is how we're going to raise our child? And when the rubber met the road, how did that plan? Did it fall apart? Did it change? Did you have one?
Yeah, no, I would say Steve is you know for him it's more like it, she's going to be fine. She'll get through it, right? It's normal. It's a normal process. I don't think school is not so important for him. He Academics were not a big deal for him as well. And while we would speak about what, just for instance, moving and coming here and for Livesey Elementary, I think I drove that conversation with him. He was always a part of every decision and could absolutely see where we were going with it. But I was definitely more the dominant parent there, right? And in terms of my philosophy on education, and it, again, did not, I didn't plan on having a child. I never had thought that way. And now here she is going through, and you're so at the mercy of so many other things, your finances, where you live, who you're around, I mean, there's so many other things going on. For me, um, I think Gabby really, you know, she guided me in terms of the philosophy of education, because I could say, yeah, I wanted all this, her education go a certain way, and my philosophy on education is, I want her to learn certain things, and this is how I want her to learn. But it really didn't roll out like that. It was more kind of falling forward on a lot of levels, hoping that she was just gonna, you know, be able to learn and grow, um, in a way that would get her to where she is now. So I didn't have any specific philosophy. We did not. And Steve was more hands off, not as hands on. So I think a lot of it fell on me, which, you know, not it wasn't always great that way, because I would say to him, you need to be more involved here. I can't be the only one involved in her education. But he's just not a worrier. He just didn't worry about it. I worried about it. I would wake up at night and worry about, is she going to be okay? Is she going to make it through? Um, so she really guided that process. Her personality guided that process. I think if I'd had a different type of child, more open to learning, loving to read, all these things, I think we would have gone in a whole different direction. But she was just not that kid. And I relied a lot on the school that she went to on Livesey, and I was involved there too. I was like a kindergarten parent. I worked in the library. I was always around her, um, in that way. She could see me, she could see me a lot, and to me that was always important. And whereas my mother was raising kids, not at all involved at all. She would know my grades. I don't think she knew how I got them. I don't think she thought about it for half a second. I don't think she had anything to do with how I got through school. She had 4 kids. She's trying to make a living. I mean, how are you going to be involved? How much can you be involved at that
Yeah,
level? And
it's a different comparison. I mean, look. Here's what I get from it: you are adaptive, you adapted, and you're resilient, and both of those qualities came through to Gabby as well. And I think that Steve, the fact that he's calm, the fact that he doesn't worry about things, and he understands that it's a long game. Guys are different. Guys are different than women. Men think differently than women do, and so you have to come to terms with that reality. But the truth is that she seems to have gotten the best from both of you to be able to navigate her way through. Obviously, this is her journey. We're talking about it through your eyes, and I'm talking about it through my eyes. But it definitely is the kids. Do you think that? Well, let me ask you something. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we haven't, any topic we haven't touched on, that anything you wanted to say?
I, we spoke briefly before the call, and I just love what you're doing in terms of this podcast and discussing all these different aspects of education and what it takes to educate a child. I mean, think about all these kids going through the system, and I know the United States doesn't have the best system nationally speaking. From a federal level, does not have, down to the local level. You've got the federal, you've got your local school systems, and probably compared to some countries, we really don't do the greatest job in you know in how we view education. And my brother Michael said this traditional idea of kids sitting behind a desk, and this whole idea of them just having to focus and be focused in the lecture. I mean, it's not the greatest way to go through school, and yet here we are producing wonderful children and wonderful adults, and somehow we get through it, and they do learn. She had, again, some great teachers along the way. Every teacher is not going to be a great teacher. Just bottom line. I don't care
Right.
what school. Not all going to be amazing, and your child is not going to learn everything there is to learn from every class that they attend. And but she did have some really great teachers, as we all did. When I look back and I think about the teachers that impacted my life, they were the ones that cared, that took the time, to really make sure that I understood something. I don't know if you went to, I think it was Southwest, but I had a teacher named Miss Morgan. I don't know if you remember Miss Morgan, but she taught math. She taught, I think it was Algebra 2 or some maybe pre-trig. I don't remember what it was. But this woman knew how much angst I had at wanting to make a good grade and learn what she was teaching. And I would go to her every day after class and I would ask her questions, and she just knew how much it meant to me. And I'll just never forget, we had taken a test and I was so nervous about it and I'd studied so hard. And when she was giving out the tests, she got to my desk and before she handed it to me, she kissed me on the forehead. And then she handed me my test. And I was like, and I had made an A. And I just remember that feeling of, wow. I mean, if you have a handful of teachers like that, regardless of the overall problems we have in this system, which is just riddled, with problems. And that's what we hear a lot about. And that's what the great thing about this podcast is that yes, I mean, you discuss the issues in education, but you do it in a way that's super constructive, um, and allows you to see just how much people really care at every level, from the administrators, from the teachers to the parents to the students. I mean, it just shows you that we're all out here trying so hard, you know, to help our kids be successful, to help them learn and grow, and to become, you know, successful, happy, well-adjusted adults. It's not going to work for everybody, and not every parent has the luxury, like we talked about, of being able to be involved. When I was with Gabi, in elementary school in those real formative years, I wasn't working, so I was picking her up every day. I was taking her to her violin lessons. I was at the school working at the library 3 days a week. I was a, class, parent. I did all those things. Feel so lucky that I was able to do those things. Um, but how much, I'm sure it influenced Gabby on so many levels, but she's still who she is. She's still who she is. She learns the way she learns, and there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, I appreciate very much the kind words you have for the podcast. My goal with this was definitely to stop just talking in my head about this stuff and go out to the world and meet some people and talk to them about it, because I enjoy a good conversation. But I'm also an optimistic person. I
Yeah.
don't look at the ugly things of the world. I learned that looking at the beautiful things of the world should be a priority. And
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that I don't understand that there are problems and that there are real problems with real solutions. But my heart goes out to the people that struggle with the not being able to do what's ideal. And I think part of
Mhm.
this is just to let them know, look, I know it's tough. I know, okay, maybe you're taking a little bit more of a risk in assuming that your child is going to do well in the future. But ultimately, I think you've said it best. Like, the system, regardless of its bumps and bruises, its warts, does produce kids that overall are good kids and that they want good things. I just think that we need to be, as a society, a little bit more attuned to the fact that things have changed on a foundational level. Things have changed foundationally, and
Absolutely.
that we have to create a new foundation, a new platform that says this is a better launch pad for you to be on, because the launch pad that we had doesn't exist anymore. Just like the infrastructure of this country has crumbled, our foundations have crumbled to an extent. And without getting too, uh, you know, patriotic, I still believe in American values. I believe that overall we've done a good job with this country experimentally, but that we have to adapt and change. We have to make changes. And the kind of changes that we have to make aren't they're not going to please everybody. So we have to start having conversations that aren't geared towards saying things that people want to hear, but saying truth. Here's the truth, and let's try to find a way to
Right.
tackle it. Let's tackle that truth together as parents and non-parents, because
Yeah.
ultimately everyone that graduates affects, it only affects parents while they're in the system, but once they're out, they're part of society. These children are the future of our country. We got to do a really good job of giving them options that are realistic to their time, not our time.
Right. I think that's so true. And what you said about, the the anxiety I think parents have at not being able to do the ideal thing, you know, that is so hard. Um, you feel like it's, a failing of your part, but it isn't, obviously, it's not. Um, but yet, I mean, that years and years of me just going, oh my gosh, what's going to be best for her? And she needs a different school, and maybe we can do this, and maybe we can do, I mean, it's just a constant, battle that and meanwhile, they're just going along doing the, doing their thing and getting through it. And you're thinking about all those things, but the reality, and I'm a realist, I wouldn't, I can be optimistic. I'm optimistic for sure. I mean, and as I've seen this play out, but I'm a realist too. I tend not to go over the top with expectations. I just don't. Um, I'd like to say yes, we have to change the foundation. How do you do that? I have no freaking idea, because it would just take so much to do that. But this is, like you said, this is foundational, what you're doing. This is foundational. And then, it is a local thing. Yes, federal funding and education and all of that, but it comes down to your local school systems, to your local counties, to your local school boards. It all comes down to that, where you live. And, I feel for people that, maybe they can't move into another area. We moved. Maybe you can't move. And then what do you do? Then what do you do?
That's exactly right. I mean, there are some things that that you can't crack it. Not in one conversation, maybe not even in one generation, but you
Right.
have to be willing to say
Yeah.
that what I see is wrong without insulting the people who built it. You can build something that you
Right.
intended to be
True.
beautiful, and it's not an insult to
Right.
those
It
before
worked
us.
right. That's right. It worked
Right.
for, but it's not really working optimally the way we would want it to work. And I
Mhm.
think everybody sees that. I mean, I think that's part of the issue too, is that everybody knows that. We all know it. We all know, like you said, the infrastructure. I mean, you just walk through neighborhoods and you see, what needs to be done. How do we fix it? How do we change it? But it's a full court press. It takes everybody to change it. It's political, it's parental, it's every single aspect of you know society. That's what it takes to make change. And that I've been through trying to make change before, right, with the whole gender stereotyping. And you know what, I'm one person, and I feel like I made a dent. And I think that's the optimist. That's how you have to be optimistic.
There you go. I mean, that's the truth. There is your optimism. Yeah, you are a person who struggles. I've always supported what you've done and what uh, your ideas. I've often told you you're more of an entrepreneur than you think you are, and that you're probably capable of coming up with something
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And then your time will come. You know that I'm an entrepreneur. But I believe I recognize that in other people as well. Their abilities to see something unique and bring it to the world. I'm hopeful that this conversation you and I have can now touch on some more parents, and some other parents can listen in and say, I've had a similar but different, and I hope that they want to reach out and be on this podcast as well. And I hope that you tell all our friends to listen, because some folks have been listening.
I think a
And
lot of, and I think the more the better. And everybody's different. Everybody's experience is completely unique. Every child is completely unique. That's why we cannot treat every kid like they're exactly the same. And that's part of the issue with the education system, right? It doesn't recognize a lot of times individuality. It can't. I mean, if you're in a private school and there are 10 kids in your class, you probably can. But in the public school system, very hard to do. Very hard to do. And
that,
yeah,
yeah, that's right. That's what Michael was saying as well, that
yeah,
there has to be a reimagining of what happens. I'm a proponent of changing things radically, but not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. There's got to be, there's keep some of the things that make sense, but evolve some of the things that, and evolve the curriculum too. The curriculum is, STEM isn't for everyone,
right,
arts isn't for everyone, but vocational isn't for everyone. But you really do need to find a blending of a new world that has the ability to bring these ideas to these relevant ideas to
right.
this next generation, because they're very
Did
different than we are.
say something about having an extra year about, that would offer curriculum that taught more life skills, or was it something like that that I
Something
just saw?
like that. Yeah, I've often thought that the way I think of it is, when we graduated from high school, you can come out with a high school diploma and you had a certain amount of jobs that were available to you, a life that was available to you. Yeah, you had to build some skills. You had to learn how to work. You had to learn how to maybe pick up the skills that you had on job. But I think that the smarter thing for us to do is maybe say, well, public school through grade 12 isn't enough. Maybe it needs to be through grade 14. And
Mhm. That's
maybe these next 2 years need to focus on something slightly different than they did academically, because we already have an academic track that's called college for people, and we have vocational schools that could potentially, I'm talking about something different, something in the middle, something for those kids that are lost, that don't know what to do, and that feel like if they don't do this, that they're going to live under a bridge, they're going to be homeless, they're never going to make it, they can't buy a house, they can't get married. There's this lack of optimism that exists for them because there's a gaping hole between graduating high school and
so true.
going to college. And it's a disservice. It's a disservice to an entire generation of people that didn't happen to us, because the people who set up the system before us knew. Let's set it up so that when you're graduated from high school, that's enough to get you into the workforce and get you into the world, or get you started in some
Right.
way. And
So
that's
true.
missing. That's just missing.
That's so true. I think so many kids, I mean, Gabby even said to me, gosh, it was last year or year before, oh, could I take a year off after high school? I just want to take a year off. And I was like, I just, I don't think I don't think it's good. And part of the reason I didn't think it was a good idea for her was, first of all, what are you going to do? Second of all, you're not academic. You don't like school. You're not a lover of school. You take that year off, and you may flail forever. I mean, again, it's like that whole thing that you said. You just don't know, right? It's the unknown. Um, if I could have said, "Hey, yeah, and I have money, and I can send you off, and you could go live in another culture and learn," but what are you going to do for a year? You're just going to sit around the house and work. I said, no, you need to let's let's get. But from what you're saying is, if there were that gap, you could call it, that that gap education that could even allow kids. I think there's this pressure, and I'm already seeing it in her, to know what she wants to do, right? There's that pressure when you go to college right away, 18, now you got to know what you want to do. I really had no idea what I wanted to do. I didn't have some kids are super focused and they know they want to be doctors, they know what they want to do, this, they know they're going to be a musician, they know. So many kids don't know, have no clue. And I wonder how many kids would choose something different if they had the time, to learn more about what it is they want to do with the rest of their life. That's a very tough decision to make kids decide at young ages, especially if they don't know. Now they have to know.
Right.
You know,
Even if we taught uh, practical philosophy, just the idea of how to think about things deeply and how to think about things that, in a non-literary way, in a non-academic way, but in a more personal way. How do I meditate? How do I find inner peace? How do I not psychologically damage myself? Because we live, and you've met these people, there's adults walking that are injured, that are hurt from attachments that they formed when they were young that didn't do well, from psychological damage of just being involved in society, and just being different, just being unique. And so much of that is unnecessary. And it isn't that they're soft, and it isn't that they're incapable of doing hard work or becoming something. It's just that maybe they didn't have what we gave our children, which is just
right,
two parents that are present. And maybe
right,
there's so many things that we could do. And if we're going to talk about things like free college, and we're just going to put them on the same treadmill as someone that they already know they're not going to be, that's taking them, they don't know where it's taking them, or it's taking them to a place they don't want to be, it doesn't work. They need to do exactly what Gabby's doing, which is, I need to find myself, but not in an idle way that takes
right,
them down the wrong path, in a
right,
thoughtful and a meaningful way that helps them build skills so that they feel confident about their contribution to the world. And if they don't feel confident, we teach them. This is how you contribute to the world positively.
right.
Go to pre-K. I have a big thing about not enough male teachers in
Sure.
elementary school. There's just not enough
The next,
male
it's
teachers.
sure. Yep. It's an
There's
issue.
more.
And where I thought I was going to be, I thought I wanted to teach. So I took, when I first went back to school for my degree at FIU, I thought that was my track. And there were no men. There were two or three out of, 50 women going through the education program. And,
Right.
and those kids need to see, they need to break out of, I mean, we all know, oh, women are nurturing and they're more motherly and they have this ability, but you need the opposite of that, um, to balance out how they learn and how they view the world. I think it would be so important to get more male teachers. How do you do that?
Absolutely. And listen, in the absence of, there's a lot of fathers that are absent from homes in society. And, there's a lot of reasons why. I don't want to get into the why that's happening, but it is happening. And most of it simply has to do with the fact that we're living in a time where, being a father didn't mean the same thing. It doesn't mean the same thing. And that you have to somehow model that for a generation of young men so that they can find themselves in a way and understand that what we are learning is that having a male presence in the home is infinitely beneficial to children. You want to have that in the household for myriad of reasons that I won't get into the details. But overall, if these young men were, hey, I'll trade you a free education and you spend time with children and teaching, it'll that dynamic will, first of all, there'll be a lot more men that women want to marry, and there'll be a lot more situations where families can stay together. And I'm an advocate for both of those things. But of
Right.
course, we can leave that for another conversation. I got to tell
We
you,
can. That's a
this
whole
is
nother
fun.
conversation we
That's
could
right.
get into. Great. I really appreciate the time, and I look forward to hearing other people's views and, experiences and how they manage to get their kids through whatever system they
Absolutely.
in.
Thank you so much for being my guest and being on this. I can hardly wait till I get a feedback from what came of our conversation. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
But of course, good to see
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm gonna
you. Like,
I'm gonna stop the podcast, but let's sit and chat for a second,
yeah,
okay?
yeah.
All right. All right. Hold on one second.